Hi, it's Kirby Summers. Today is May 28th, the Tuesday after Memorial Day 2024. I hope you guys had a really good weekend. I am going to be doing a podcast for all of you and for my new followers here. Thank you. On Bohemian Grove. It's someone who worked at Bohemian Grove and some questions that were posed to this person and the way that he responded to them. So for those of you who are unaware of Bohemian Grove, um, it has long been, if you hear someone building something, it's happening in my apartment. If it becomes too problematic for you to listen to this podcast, just leave it in the comment section and I will, do it again and upload it again. But I'm just going to keep going. So basically, it's a camp that the elites go to every summer. It's usually for 2 weeks. We have seen a pretty famous photograph of, I believe, Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, and a few other people taken in 1967. And it's in a specific area. There are different areas of the so-called summer camp for the elites. So that photograph was taken in the summer of 1967. And I believe I'm going to use that as the cover for this podcast. Um, Bohemian Grove is very difficult to get into. We know that Alex Jones snuck in. It's basically a 27-acre sort of campground in Monte Rio, California. It was founded in 1878, and it's sort of referred to as, quote, a private gentleman's club. Um, and so some of the most powerful people in the world are known to go there. And so I'm just going to go into the questions that this one person who worked at the Grove was asked. And we'll see how many questions and answers I can get in. So this person worked in the, quote, dining circle. And he said that a lot of the members enjoyed making sculptures out of their food, using the food and the silverware, and then the staff would have to clean up after them. And at one point, these men made a sculpture using the salt and pepper shakers, the cups, the forks, and it was, it went up as high as 4 feet. So this is just a bunch of different things that he observed during his time at the private getaway place. Let's see. So like he was asked if you can bring a guest, and yeah, guests are allowed. And there are certain rules that a guest has to pay a certain amount of money depending on their rank, let's say. However, you know, he was asked whether or not the guests get special service or less service. And those of you who follow me on either Substack and or my Twitter will have seen the photograph that one of my followers was very kind enough to send me of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell attending Bohemian Grove in the summer of 1991. And at the time, Bill Clinton was making a speech there just before his presidential bid and before he became president. So I have a lot of pages here. I'm just going to ask you to sort of ignore the noise that you hear in my apartment. And then let me just keep moving because there are tons of. So like he said that a lot of the craziness stemmed in from the fact that the members were all drunk. every day, all day long, and that they would sort of come in for breakfast with a hangover. They would then have a drink for breakfast. They would have another drink at lunch, and then they would continue to drink heavily in the evening. So in general, what he witnessed was a lot of drunken behavior. And so that the circle where he was assigned to would be a huge redwood grove, and a lot of the members, instead of walking to the bathroom, would just relieve themselves by the trees. I mean, they basically just left all their manners and all their well-behaved behavior, which they exhibit to the public, outside of this place. Once they were in this place, they just behaved like, people with no inhibitions whatsoever. He then said that somebody ordered a lobster for breakfast. And he said truthfully that it's a kind of place that no matter what anybody there wants, he makes it happen. And that one time he heard Karl Rove cursing terribly, and that's the kind of behavior you had to sort of like just get used to. A lot of people being just aggressive or rude or nasty or, just bad behavior. So somebody did ask this person if they let things slip. So for example, like did anybody talk about the assassination of John F. Kennedy? And he's like, he wasn't really close enough, and he couldn't really like linger to listen to anything. That his job was to serve food, so that serving food didn't give him the opportunity to hear the conversations. He did say that when he went to serve Rove, who was speaking to Ashcroft, and they were kind of like talking to each other in what looked to him to be a serious conversation, they really just shut up and stopped until he was gone. And then, he was asked, well, what's the security like there? Are there armed guards? Are there Dobermans? Are there people patrolling with laser guns? I mean, what's the deal? And he's like, that the grounds are situated, number one, in a very remote place. And for the workers to get in, they had to go through 2 different checkpoints with the guards and present their IDs and parking passes. And once they were in there and they were able to park their car, then they got onto a shuttle that's for Bohemian Grove, a Bohemian Grove owned shuttle, and that they were shuttled to the specific area that they worked in. So they didn't get to see all of the Grove. They only got to see the part specifically that they were assigned to. And now he's like, when George W. Bush or Dick Cheney showed up, he said they had their Secret Service guys with them, but he did not observe any Dobermans or laser guns. He said it would be very difficult for anybody to have gotten in. He then added that he at one time did do security work. When he first got out of the Army, he worked for a security firm that had a contract with Bohemian Grove. And then he's like, the ground securities are a bunch of these former Army guys, and they rent and they hire private agencies to make sure the place is very securely guarded. He was asked if there were people that, could be hired to perform certain services, and if he ever saw a fight. He wanted to know if Clinton attended. I just told you that Clinton was in attendance and in fact spoke in 1991 in the summer when Epstein and Maxwell were there. And then he was further asked if he had seen anything as violent as murder. And he said that yes, that there were people that were hired to entertain in that manner, if you catch my drift. And so he said that they're also just across the street, there's a for hire place, again, if you catch my drift, and that, he's sure that people were brought in. So he did say that he never saw anybody break out into a fist fight. They just seemed to be pretty happy most of the time. And then he's like, no, I never really witnessed anybody being off at the location. Now, remember, this guy's just serving food. So if somebody's gonna do something like that in a place like that, it's not gonna happen out in, in the food service area. So anyway, the members do not tip, and he was very disappointed to discover that, as somebody who's working at this place with the most wealthy and powerful people on the planet, that they would not tip, and he was not expected to be tipped. But he said that the job paid really well, and so that it was well worth it. And so he's like, it wasn't bad for a summer job. So let's see. He said that a guy that was obviously very drunk stood up and got the attention of like maybe 1,000 people that were there. So it extended the area that he was serving at. And he made a toast about how they were the elite, the luckiest, and basically the most privileged people in the world. And he's like, not in a way that we should be thankful, like if we stood up and we were like, yay, we're so wonderful and we're so appreciative. He said, no, in a way that was just, we rule the world, and that's just the way it is. He said that he went and he did this job 2 years, and that he did see musical acts, and that in fact, at one point, one of the 2 years that he was there, Steely Dan performed. So let me just keep scrolling here and see if I can get you. So like, he was asked if he ever came across people trying to spy on the guests, and let me see what he said about that. And he's like, no, that it's like really difficult to spy on anyone who's staying there, that there's a ton of security around the perimeter of the grounds. And again, that it would be really hard to get in without the right ID. And although the workers among themselves tried to do some spying, he never saw anything weird. He only saw that, the guys would kind of not go to the bathroom. They would just do what they had to do by the trees. One of the guests always came to breakfast wearing a bathrobe and nothing underneath. He didn't see any nudity. He said that the most embarrassing thing that he witnessed was that a very fat person, or a fat man, sat down at one of the picnic tables, which is very sturdy, but he crushed the whole thing, and that the guy fell backwards, and everybody just laughed, and he thought it was hilarious. So then he, again, he was asked if he heard about any conspiracies about assassinating anybody. He's like, no, there were a lot of jokes. Now, sometimes between you and me, we know that some people will joke about something that is real in an attempt to make it sound like it's not real. He said he did hear jokes to that manner, but he did not think that they were actually conspiring to off anyone. So he wanted to know how someone else wanted to know how he had gotten the job in the first place. And he said, they do not advertise, that the only way to get a job there is to be referred by people who have worked there before. So somebody who worked there before kind of led him into getting this job. And so let's see, I mean, he was asked, who was the most likable person that he encountered during the time that he was working there. And he said that the most likable guy, it was a short, Asian man who all the employees called Frogman, because he gives everyone who serves him a little toy frog, and that he knows that he's affiliated with somebody from Nintendo. That's something you guys may want to look up, and if you find who it is, maybe add it to the comments below. But he couldn't recognize him. He said he looked similar. He was just very nice. He was polite. And what stood out was that none of them are nice and polite. So that this guy, who went out of his way to be nice and smile and be uber courteous, was not the norm, that everybody else is super rude. And so, he remembers this guy from quote Nintendo. So I did do a little searching, and I'm just going to put out a name if that's what you guys find about maybe this guy being Mr. Frogman. I found a man by the name of Hiroshi Yamauchi. So because I messed up that last name, I'm going to spell it for you. I'm sorry. It's Yamauchi. And so he was born November 7th, 1927, and he died September 19, 2013. He was a Japanese businessman, and he was the third president of Nintendo, having joined the company in 1943 until he stepped down in 2002. But then he was succeeded by another Japanese man by the name of Satoru Iwata. Again, I'm going to spell that last name for you. It's Iwata. And that during the 53 years that he was with Nintendo, he transformed the business into an enormous global conglomerate. So, all right. So definitely, he did get the fact that he was Japanese correct, and that there's a Japanese person connected to Nintendo. So he did say that he saw Jimmy Buffett there, and that he was very nice and friendly. And he said that the people who have not had children are usually the nicest, and they're the ones to sort of converse with the help. But as a rule, they were not allowed to initiate a conversation with any guest. And so someone sort of added some additional information saying that he had been to the Grove as a guest a few times because his grandfather is a member, and he kind of agreed with the information that this guy who worked there for 2 summers provided, saying that it's pretty much a wealthy, highly successful group of people hanging out, drinking and smoking cigars, majority of whom have conservative political views, but with a few notable left-wingers. He did not, while he was there, observe any pagan rituals. He didn't observe the O word, the ORGIES word, but he did say that it's a place where super famous and powerful people can go hang out, drink, and talk with like-minded people and get silly without crowds of photographers, reporters, or anyone else getting in the way. And sometimes they, because they're in a place where everything is protected, including what they say, they can just relax without worrying that it's going to appear in the newspaper the following day, which, to be honest, I don't believe mainstream media is going to be covering anything about something that would be a high security clearance anyway. So I don't think that would have been a problem. So I'm going to call this part 1 because there's just too much work going on in my apartment right now. And I want you guys to have a good listening experience, but do me a favor, give this a like, and subscribe if you haven't done so. All right, guys, have a good day. Bye.